Hello everybody, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeat on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. You can find us on Facebook if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, and you can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So this week we are chatting to Nicola Cowie, Coach Nicola. But before we do that, we are going to head over to the Rhylight Zone for part one, I think, of The Hellfire Club, which is a short story by myself, Dane Cobain, for an upcoming short story collection I'm working on. It's based on the Dublin Hellfire Club, not the High Wycombe one. I do also have another Hellfire Club. In fact, this collection is going to have two different stories about the Hellfire Club because it's such a popular ghost story.
Montpellier. It was dark and it was raining. The ruins of the former Hellfire Club sat at the top of Montpellier in the Dublin Mountains, overlooking the city. The little light that there was came from the few stars that weren't obscured by the clouds and the pollution from the distant streets. The building itself was built from mud and red brick, cemented together with some long-forgotten recipe and weathered by the elements until it looked like it had sprung out of the ground. The walls were dotted with windows, some small squares, a couple of large rectangles, and an imposing archway on the opposite wall to the entrance, though the glass had long since disappeared, blown out in storms that no living soul could still remember, though they'd been passed down in the stories told over fireplaces on cold winter nights. It was the perfect building for the desolate spot amongst the grassland atop the mountains, and it had a history as old as anything that the city itself had to offer. Perhaps it was just a myth or a legend, but if it was, then it was the best kind of myth or legend, the kind that has at least a passing acquaintance with historical reality. Whatever the case, the old-timers with a connection to the land said that it dated back to the Neolithic period, making it as much as 6,500 years old. Bristol Paul, one of the local who'd earned the nickname because he'd once spent a summer across the sea and the locals had never let him live it down, liked to say, "The ruins were ruins long before the Celts were Celts, and they'll still be there long after we've gone. They're a piece of our history, our culture. Even the British Army couldn't destroy them." To which one of the other would inevitably ask, "How can you ruin ruins?" The truth was that no one, not even Bristol Paul, knew the real story of the ruins. Most people thought that it had started out as some sort of tomb, but that was just a guess, a ghost story to be told over the dying embers of campfires or at sleepovers where kids stayed up late and switched to whispering stories when their parents went to bed and the Xbox would have made too much noise. Over the centuries, the tomb was repurposed, becoming a shelter of sorts for weary travellers in the winter months, when it was too dark to press onto the city until the following morning. It also developed a reputation as a haunt for outlaws, those who couldn't enter the city limits without the Gardae taken after them. It was a reputation that lasted until long past the Second World War. But our story takes place long before that, in the middle of the 18th century. It was a period of uncertainty and uneasiness. The English had taken over the land and imposed harsh laws on Irish Catholics, which meant the majority of the country's population. For the locals, it was the opening salvo in a war of the people that threatened to eventually spill over into genocide. But in Dublin, there was a thriving Protestant community, the members of which were only too happy to see their Catholic counterparts being prevented from taking public office or serving in the armed services. New Catholic churches were almost unheard of, and those that were built were made of wood and away from the main roads. The new laws hadn't done much damage to the city, which was still growing at an alarming rate. It was said that Dublin was the second biggest city in the British Empire, with only London having more people on its storied streets. The city had started the century looking like the Paris of Europe, especially from above, with a similar layout and plenty of picturesque and impractical medieval buildings. As the century progressed, work had been carried out to modernise the city, with a number of notable buildings springing up almost overnight, their Georgian facades in stark contrast to the rest of the city. The city had been shaped by Lieutenant General James Fitzthomas Butler, 1st Duke of Ormond and Lord Deputy of Ireland, who'd been the first to give orders to bring the city from the past into the present. Butler had ordered that any houses built along the River Liffey would need to be built facing the river, and their facades would have to be designed with aesthetics in mind. It made the river more of a focus, transforming it from little more than a dumping ground into a living, breathing organism of its own. It took a few decades and a lot of clean-up work to stop it from stinking like a cesspit, though. Even despite all of the building and the cleaning, the city remained a work in progress. There were parts of Dublin where it was unwise to venture alone at night and where women and children weren't even safe in the daytime. The slums just kept growing, mainly because the rural folk moving in from the countryside couldn't afford to live anywhere nicer. The slums were mostly to the north and the southwest, and those who could afford to avoid them did exactly that. There were good reasons for that. The streets were roamed by gangs like the Liberty Boys and the Ormond Boys, groups of urchins and miscreants who gathered together based on a shared region or religion. The gangs kept themselves to themselves when they could, because on those occasions when they did clash together, it always ended with blood running through the street. From time to time, the sun would rise on a body in the gutter, but they were gutter kids who often had no one to miss them. They were usually carted away and buried in an unmarked grave somewhere with nowhere to mourn them. Riots weren't uncommon, especially when there were controversies around new laws. When people weren't poor, they were mad. When he died in 1745, Gulliver's Travels author Jonathan Swift left his entire estate to be spent building a hospital for the fools and the mad. The following year, King George II awarded a royal charter to St Patrick's Hospital, which became the first psychiatric hospital to be built in Ireland. It's one of the oldest such facilities in the world, and is still one of the country's leading mental health hospitals to this day. Swift had previously penned a modest proposal, an ironic and satirical piece that suggested that the Irish poor could make a little cash by selling their children to the rich for food. If he'd lived 300 years later and been born in the United States, he could have been president.
That was the part one of the Hellfire Club by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Lizzie Porsey with Fool of My Heart.
Walked in so confidently, ready to win. Got my eyes locked on you the second you walked in. Had rumors about your life, breaking hearts both left and right. But boy, don't you know that karma ain't nice. I'm all in, ain't here to play games, but it will take two of us to make it. So tell me honestly, you won't lie in front of me when you say you love me. Stand by every word. Tell me honestly, think about your one and only. Know you're playing with fire. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool, don't make a fool, don't make a fool of my heart. Ratting me out on a date to woo my heart. But little did you know I knew the game from the start. Boy, I ain't easy to win. I know this little game you play, breaking love within the dark over and over again. I'm all in, ain't here to play games, but it will take two of us to make it. So tell me honestly, you won't lie in front of me when you say you love me. Stand by every word. Tell me honestly, think about your one and only. Know you're playing with fire. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool, don't make a fool, don't make a fool. Tick-tock, time is running out. We speak the truth, or do I call you out? Tick-tock, time is running, time is running, time is running. Tick-tock, time is running out. Will you speak the truth, or do I call you out? Tick-tock, time is running, time is running, time is running out. So tell me honestly, you won't lie in front of me when you say you love me. Stand by every word. Tell me honestly, think about your one and only. Know you're playing with fire. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a
your razors while pulling the waiters. Talking about Monroe and walking on Snow White. New York's a go-go and everything tastes nice. Oh, little Greenie. Woo-hoo. Jimmy lives on his back. Jimmy loves Jimmy Stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Jimmy, let yourself go. Sits like a man, but he smiles like a reptile. She loves him, but just for a short while. She's scratching the sand, won't let go of his hand. He says he's a beautician, sells you nutrition, and keeps all your dead hair for making up underwear. Poor little Greenie. Woo-hoo. Jimmy lives on his back. Jimmy loves Jimmy Stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Jimmy, let yourself go. So simple-minded, can't drive his motor. Lights on the neon, sleeps in a capsule. Loves to be loved. Loves to be loved. Lives on his back. Jimmy loves Jimmy Stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Jimmy, let yourself go. Jimmy lives on his back. Jimmy loves Jimmy Stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Jimmy, let yourself go. You betcha.
That was Radio Generation with Gene Genie, and before that we had Lizzie Porsey with Fall of My Heart. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and I'm joined in conversation now by Coach Nicola, who is a running coach and general wellnessy person. Well, the first question is my traditional opening question. Some people have really good answers, some people have no answer at all. We'll see where it goes. It is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
Well, the last book I read was called O Caledonia, and I've forgotten the author's name. I think it's Maggie O'Farrell, and
Okay.
it was I picked up in the library. I just read it and thought, well, that sounds interesting. It starts off with a teenage girl dead at the bottom of the stairs, and then it just tells how she got there, and it's set in the 40s and 50s in Scotland, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Sounds like my kind of thing as well. I might have to check that one out.
Okay.
So, Obviously today, one of the main things I want to chat to you about, I want to chat all things Coach Nicola. But to sort of lead into that, I want to focus specifically on running. So how long have you been running and how did you get your start with it?
So I've been running for just over 10 years,
Hmm.
and I started running because I got a car. So I grew up in London.
Hmm.
You don't need to learn how to drive in London. I never learned how to drive. I moved out to Buckinghamshire um, in, when was that? Like 2005. And for the first 5 or 6 years, I was living quite near his train station, so I still didn't need to drive. And then moved out a bit further into a village where there's not that, the trains and the buses weren't that great. I was still getting around, all fine. And then I went and saw my aunt, and she said she was in her 80s and said, the thing I regret most is not learning how to drive because I'm not that independent now.
Mm.
And it made me think, okay, I better do that. So I learned to drive. I then started driving everywhere and didn't walk as much. And so it got to a point where I walked up a flight of stairs and thought, I'm a bit out of breath. And not realizing, because I think you don't realize how much you move and you walk when you don't drive. So
Yeah.
you walk to the bus stop, you walk everywhere. Um, Even though it doesn't really seem like you're doing a lot of walking, you are. Um, so that's where I got into running. I tried a few other things first because I thought I need to keep my fitness up. I can't be out of breath walking up the stairs. Um, and then I read someone that I followed who wrote a blog said that she was doing a Catch to 5K program.
Hmm.
And I thought, I'll give that a go. And she actually did Zombies Run, which
Yeah.
is, you know that one, yeah. So she
Yeah.
did that one, and I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. A bit of a story, bit of a run. Let's go for it. Gave myself 4 weeks. Um, I was running in my Converse. I didn't have any trainers, um, and I didn't want to buy any trainers until I knew I'd stick with it.
Yeah.
So first 4 weeks, I was running in Converse, and then was like, "Oh, I quite like this. I better get some proper trainers." And that's it, really. I kind of yeah, carried on running from then.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I did Zombies Run as well. I used to do it actually, sort of at the we mentioned before we joined the call actually about COVID and during the first set of lockdowns, I got really into walking and I used to live near a hill and I
Yeah,
used to walk up and down the hill each day and I'd do an episode of Zombies Run.
yeah,
And then when I got into running at the gym, I was doing it on the treadmill as well. I don't do it these days because I just listen to podcasts.
yeah.
Um,
Same here.
but yeah, it was a really good way of sort of getting into it. And so, nowadays you're a member of at least two running clubs that I know of. What can you tell us about the running clubs you're in?
So I'm a member of Vegan Runners,
Hmm.
which is a national running club. It's England Athletic affiliated, so it's like a proper official running club, but we're just national. So it's a what's the word? Accessible.
Yeah,
Um, You can join it if you're a vegan. It's
yeah,
the word I was trying to say. It's for vegans, it's for runners, and it's to promote running to vegans and veganism to runners, really. So that's fantastic. Because it's a national club, you don't have, as you know, because you're also a member,
hmm,
we don't have like necessarily weekly meetups or anything, but we quite often have monthly ones, park run meetups, and there's things happening all around the country. And then my other running club is my very local Wadston Runners, which I set up, and that came about because I did a Couch to 5K program for people in my village, and then it was like, well, I might as well carry on doing this. And it first off, it was just 1 day a week, and now we run 2 days a week, and we do a bit of interval training, a bit of speed work, and a bit of just a nice kind of social run. And in the summer, go a little bit off road as well.
awesome, cool. And I want to chat specifically about veganism. How long have you been vegan, and what was behind the decision to go vegan?
So I've been vegan for 30 years, and the reason I went vegan was because of the protests against live exports. So back in the 90s, there was a lot of protests. I was vegetarian. I went vegetarian when I was 7, so I was already vegetarian, but I hadn't made that connection between dairy,
Hmm.
really, and what happens to dairy cows. I think you just think that cows just produce milk. Um,
Yeah.
that's just something they naturally do, and there's got nothing to do with being pregnant or anything like that. And that's the way you think that milk is. And until the protest around live exports, which was all about stopping the exports of the male calves, which were the surplus calves to the dairy industry.
Hmm.
They were being exported to Europe for the field trade.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of protests around the ports around that. And I think that's what made me think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm vegetarian, but maybe I should start looking into this a bit more. And
Hmm.
then I met someone else. Where I was working, there was somebody in the shop above us that was also vegan, and I got talking to her, and it was like, oh, yeah, I think I better be vegan.
Yeah. That's cool. So you must have seen as well like a huge change in terms of availability. I mean, when you first went vegan, was it just sort of like just falafel and vegetable curry kind of thing? And then
It's not even that, it was chips and salad.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I think when I first became vegan, it was really not much availability at all. You'd go somewhere and it would be chips and salad.
yeah.
Um, and in the shops, like there wasn't the availability of stuff. You'd go to health food shops and you'd get
Hmm.
sort of veggie sausages and tofu and other things. And I think when I first went vegan, there were two things that I remember, which was concentrated soy milk. So you could buy like a 500 ml thing of soy milk that you then diluted to make it
Hmm.
into drinkable, and cheese in a jar, which wasn't very nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the cheeses have come developed a lot, but also yeah, all the availability of everything that's now you can go into pretty much any town, and there will be something that's more than just chips and salad on the menu that you can have as a vegan, which is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Okay. So one of the things I want to ask you about, you're currently in training for the London Marathon.
Yeah.
Can you let us know a little bit about, well, how that came about, really, who you're raising money for, and how the training's going?
So last year it was my 30th year of being vegan, my 10th year of being a runner, and I wanted to celebrate, and I decided I was going to run a race every month. And I wasn't necessarily going to race that race. Some of them I was just running for enjoyment. But I finished the year having run 12 races, really enjoyed it, run a couple of half marathons, thinking, oh, what's next? What am I going to do? And I was thinking about doing a marathon. I was like, I'm in a good state to do a marathon. I've done lots of running, I've done lots of training. Um, Maybe that's something I could do. And then someone for a very small charity called the Wednesday Club, which is based in Waddesdon, they managed to get a charity place at London, and they were after a runner to run for them. And the woman that organises it uh, approached me and said, "Do I know anybody who would like to run it?" And I thought, yes, I do. And kind of talking to my runners in part of my group and just offering it out to them first of all, and everybody thinking, "Oh, I'd love to, but I'm not quite there yet," or saying, "No, I definitely never want to run a marathon."
Yeah.
It was one of the two reactions. I thought, okay, then I think this is the sign that I need to say yes. So I did. So yes, it's the Wednesday Club, which is a lunch club for people, older people in our community. So they have a day on Wednesdays. They do yoga or other activities in the morning. They have lunch. They're social. They do quizzes. They do activities. They do day trips, and it's really about kind of preventing social isolation
Mm.
for older residences. I think especially in more rural areas where the transport might not be that great, you can be in a position of any age where you can be quite isolated. But I think the older you are, the more difficult that becomes. So they have a coach, they bring people in on the bus, and it's a really, really nice small charity that I'm really, really happy to be supporting by running for them.
Awesome. Cool. So what is Coach Nicola? What do you do as Coach Nicola?
So I am a running coach, and I'm also a personal trainer, and For my personal training, I specialize in women's fitness. So I look at things like pelvic floor health, pre and postnatal, menopause, hysterectomy. So things that affect women that might stop them from being as active as they'd like to be. And then also for people who have long-term health conditions. So anything from kind of arthritis, high blood pressure, through to things like chronic fatigue, which again are sort of barriers to people being active. So that's really what I focus on is how can I help people become more active, so that they can live the best life that they can. So that's in my sort of personal training side. And then with the running, it is all about helping people enjoy running. So helping people stop getting as injured as much, helping people feel comfortable when they're running, whatever their goals might be, whether that's kind of starting running their first 5K, running their first marathon, to running sort of multiple marathons, whatever it might be. I think the focus is on making things enjoyable and making things easy and
Yeah.
making things comfortable.
Yeah. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Coach Nicola, and this is the Scardinals with their version of Too Much Too Young. That was the Scardinals with their version of Too Much Too Young. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be rejoined in conversation now by Coach Nicola. Well, it's funny because that puts me in mind of I did this will date the interview, but I did the London Winter Run, the 10K yesterday.
Yes.
And as I was doing it, I was like, this is horrible. I'm not enjoying myself because I was pushing myself so hard to try and get a record time, and I was like, this is such a different kind of running to when I decided I'm just going to go for a run. Just, I might run the same distance and it might take me 15 minutes longer. But I'll enjoy it so much more because I'm just sort of doing it just to get out of the house, get some fresh air, see a bit of nature. And so it's interesting, as you say, there are different kinds of running, and some people, to them, like, running coaching might be, I want to get faster. I want to, do a 5K in 20 minutes or whatever. Somebody else, it might just be, I want to stop injuring myself. Somebody else, it might be, I want to run longer distances, or I want to go from running on the roads to running on trails and things. So it's interesting, like, how there are many different aspects to it as well, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So you think, oh, running, for some people, like you say, running might just be all about the time and getting faster, but there's so many other reasons people run: for kind of mental health, for being out in nature, for being able to see things. So I also do trail runs in the summer, where I do shorter guided trail runs where people can come along and just, whether they've never run on trails before and just experience kind of being in the countryside, which I really love doing. But and the people that I coach as well, a lot of them they might have big time goals, but it is sort of more sort of getting to that time goal without feeling that stress, or getting to that time goal without being injured.
Yeah.
And like I said, just being a bit more comfortable, even though on race day it might not feel so comfortable. Getting there in the training is all about kind of that enjoyment and feeling comfortable about what you're doing.
Yeah. And we've mentioned road running and trail running. Could you kind of just define the difference between the two and also let us know which one you prefer?
Yeah, so road running is anything on the road, tarmac, pavement, so running around cities, running around streets. Trail running to me is, well, is anything off-road. Some people might think, oh, it's very, very technical, kind of, up mountains and all that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be just running on footpaths in your local park.
Hmm.
That's, a type of trail running. And I think I love trail running much more than road running, even though I do like road running. Thinking about I'm training for the marathon now, so I'm doing a
Yeah.
lot of road running at the moment, and it's winter, so it's a lot less muddy
Yeah.
on the road. So you've got all that as well. But the thing I love about trail running is being in nature. So
Mm.
you see so many animals, you see different times that you might run the same route every week, and every week it will be different. So there's last year in the summer, I ran a route that I'd run the year before, and this year the farmers had planted wildflowers in them
Yeah.
in they left it fallow and planted loads of wildflowers. And I turned around the corner into this field and it was like, wow, it's a meadow.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like that last year. And I think that's what I love. So road running, I think, tends to be the same. You can run the same route, and it's pretty much consistent. There might be a few more puddles if it's been raining, but it's going to be quite consistent. Whereas if you go out trail running, you never know what to expect.
Yeah.
It could be really muddy, it could be really wet, it could be loads of cracks in the ground if it's been really dry, and you don't know what you're going to see. I've been on runs where I've gone down a path and seen like a deer just in the middle of the path, just stood there and watched it. And I know there's fields near me where there's certain types of birds that I know I'm going to see, and hares, and oh, I love it.
Yeah. No, I'm team trails as well.
Yeah.
So cool. What was your active advent and will you be doing it again this year?
Oh, yes, yes, I will be doing it again. So Active Advent is something I do every year. It starts off on the 1st of December. It's completely free. And what I do is you get an email from me with either a recipe, a workout, or sort of a wellness tip. And the idea is just to give yourself a little sort of 5 or 10 minutes of looking after yourself on that day as you lead up to Christmas. And I started it because I think Christmas, that leading up to Christmas can be a bit hectic for people, and you're always kind of rushing around doing stuff, trying to get ready for Christmas, or a lot of people are. And you have a lot of, events happening, or you may have a lot of events happening. And being able to do this little active advent calendar type thing, where you just have 5 or 10 minutes, where you just have a little reset, a little refocus. Even if you don't do that activity for that day, you can do it the next day, and just kind of hopefully make yourself do a bit more for yourself.
Mm.
Beyond the 24 days of the active advent. And I know you signed up this year, or last year, and did it, so hopefully you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Awesome. And you mentioned just sending out those emails. I mean, you have a newsletter in general as well. Why should people sign up to your newsletter?
Oh, I think I have very good feedback about it. So my newsletters are generally, I always have recipes of
Hmm.
things that you can try. I do little kind of tips about how you can again look after yourself a bit more. So it might be like last week I sent a letter just about how adding 10 minutes of movement a day can make a big improvement into your health. I've written about kind of stretches and how you can do stretches to help your everyday activity. So it's not necessarily all about working out and getting fitter, but I'm very much about looking after yourself during the day for whatever your activities are. So it's not just getting fitter for the sake of being fitter. It's kind of getting fitter so life is a bit easier. So
Yeah.
you can get older and still be able to do things, making things more comfortable where you are now as well. So yeah, so that's kind of what I write about, and hopefully I do get people saying they appreciate the tips and enjoy what I write. So hopefully other people would as well.
Cool. And this is a bit of a broad question, but how has being a runner helped you just kind of in life in general? How has it affected your life?
I think it's bringing a lot of enjoyment to things. So just being able to get out and run and just relying on yourself. You
Hmm.
don't really need to kind of rely on anyone else. You can just go out and do something. And I think being able to go trail running as well, exploring the local area, um, and just being out in nature. I think that's the main thing. I think otherwise, yeah, you can stay all day indoors, can't you?
Hmm.
And you can't see and you don't get outside. So yeah, I think what has running done for me? Yeah, I think just bringing enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned there as well, and I was thinking about this earlier. I suppose it helps in two ways because there's kind of documented links between exercise being good for your mental health, and
Yeah,
there's also links between getting out in nature being good for your mental health. So I
yeah,
suppose, trail running is like a double dose of mental healthy goodness.
absolutely, absolutely. And I really advise it. You don't have to run, you can get out and walk,
Hmm.
but getting out on the trails, just exploring the footpaths. I've got the OS app, the OS Map app on my phone, which is fantastic. I really recommend people downloading that because you can see where your footpaths are. So quite often I will be out and I will notice that there's a footpath sign that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
So I can have a look at the app and go, where does that lead? And then decide whether, or do I want an adventure today? Have I got time for an adventure today? Do I want to go down there? Or if not,
Yeah.
I'll just put it like in my mind, like, okay, I'm going to come back and explore that. And I think it's that exploration, that sense of adventure as well. Um, yeah, that's what running is as well. It's a
Mm.
sense of adventure of being able to kind of get out there and just take whatever you need in your pockets or in your backpack and explore.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because again with trail running, and you mentioned you don't necessarily have to run it. That whenever I'm out trail running, there's like two types of people I meet. It's either other runners coming in the other direction, like
Yeah,
doing the same route that I'm doing, but the
yeah,
other way around or whatever. Or it's quite a lot of like dog walkers, or like again, because I'm self-employed, so I'll just go out at like, noon or something on a Tuesday or something when everyone
yeah,
else is at work. And the only other people I see are like retirees just going for a little stroll and having a picnic or something.
yeah,
And it's always nice because as well, you always get that little moment of where you're like, oh, hi,
yeah,
you say hello to someone in the most bizarre places where you'd think I would never see another person here. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah, there they are. So it's always interesting to see the kind of types of people you see out there exploring.
yeah.
Cool. So I have one last question to end on, which is, well, it's two in one really, but it's what's next for you and where can people follow you to stay up to date?
Lovely. Well, as we've already talked, next is the London Marathon, so that's what I'm
Hmm.
doing and what I'm training for, um, from my own personal running, um, and people can keep in touch with me on my website, so coachnicola.com, or I'm on Instagram, Coach Nicola, or Facebook, Coach Nicola UK, and they're the best places. And if you want to sign up to my newsletter, go to coachnicola.com and sign up, and you can keep in touch with what I'm doing. But yeah, I think after the marathon, it's the trail runs that I'll
Yeah.
be plotting and exploring and taking people on from May. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Big thank you to Coach Nicola for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Simon Gregory with Call of Duty.
to school, but I worked my father's land. I'd never been 10 miles from our home. But after 15 summers I could ride and I could shoot, and I ventured to the county fair alone. The sergeant in the army tent had shillings on his drum, and his stories and the ale called to me. And before I knew it, I'd received my shilling and a gun, off to fight the French for my king and country. And it wasn't just the foe who saw us coming, as we marched in line with rifles in our hands, and slaughtered boys who looked like us but spoke another tongue, to decide which rich man got to rule the land. Rule the land. 2 centuries on, it's still the same. Everything's different, but nothing's changed. I wasn't good at school, and I couldn't find a job that required all the skills I'd learned at home. A life of watching movies, playing Xbox, flying drones doesn't fit you for a standard office clone. But I'd seen all the recruitment advertising, let us make you into all that you can be. And before I knew it, I'd received a buzz cut and a gun, and the rest is military history. History. We'd make friends to last a lifetime. They never said how long that life would be. And those of us who made it back were not the boys who left our homes to answer to the call of our duty. They promised we'd come back covered in glory, we'd be heroes and our country would be proud. But who has work for men who've seen too much and can't forget the things they've done, and blood spill on that foreign ground? And it wasn't just the foe who saw us coming, as we stood there with our papers in our hands. It wasn't in the desert or the field or in the trench, but on the home front where we took our final stand. It wasn't just the foe who saw us coming, as we stood there with our papers in our hands. It wasn't in the desert or the field or in the trench, but on the home front where we took our final stand. The final stand. The land, who makes the choice, who makes the profit, who pays the price.
you, love to you, love to you. All I wanna do is wash your clothes. I don't want to keep you indoors. There is nothing for you to do. Keep me making love to you, love to you, love to you. And I can tell by the way you walk that walk, and I can hear by the way you talk that talk, and I can know by the way you treat your girl that I can give you all the loving in the whole wide world. What I wanna do is bake your bread just to be sure you're well fed. I don't want you sad and blue. I just wanna make love to you, love to you, love to you. And I could tell by the way you walk that walk, and I can hear by the way you talk that talk, and I can know by the way you treat your girl that I can give you all the loving in the whole wide world. What I wanna do is bake your bread just to make sure you're well fed. I don't want you sad and blue. I just wanna make love to you, 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 love to you. Love to you. I just wanna make love to you.
That was Straight 8 with their version of I Just Want to Make Love to You, and before that we had Call of Duty by Simon Gregory. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilk Shed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
Prelude to Ecstasy, The Last Dinner Party. This album was released in 2024. The Last Dinner Party of 5 young women, a singer, a keyboard player, a bass player and 2 guitarists. Though on this album there is a male session drummer, they do have a female drummer when they play live. It is very European, very English. There are no traces of blues or Americana, and it is a bit like 1970s prog rock, a bit Kate Bush. But though the playing is everything it needs to be, there is no tiresome virtuosity. The lyrics are not predictable, not like they have been written by a professional lyricist. There is little regard for scansion or rhyme, though the melodies are strong and memorable. Syllables are split several times to keep the tune solid. This seems to represent a refusal to use filler words and adds weight to the observations. The lead singer has very clear diction, so you would not need to look at the included lyric sheet. She's precise like a newsreader, one of those head-girly jolly hockey sticks political commentators. An Emily Maitlis or Sophie Ridge. Her name is Abigail Morris and she sounds so like an Abigail Morris. Sometimes the words are quite quotable, like, "The power of my hips are useless in the dark, and what good are red lips when you are faced with something sharp?" The words are an insight into how as a young woman she sees the world, and are in places slightly erotic and sweary, and often very amusing. It is like hearing conversations not meant for the ears of the male of the species, like conversations that are not intended to be heard outside of the cubicle marked by a character wearing a dress. When I was a minicab driver, I would often pick up parties of women, either on their way to a party or returning from a party. They would forget I was there and say the kind of things men should never hear. They would often apologise and admit that they had forgotten I was there. But this is not just the musings of a different gender, but a different generation and different sexualities. If it was not that I have seen so many great reviews of this album from middle-aged male YouTubers, I might have felt like I was being a bit voyeuristic. An example of other lines that really impressed me are "I wish I knew you when touch was innocent," "I wish I knew you before it felt like a sin," and "I'm just a mirror, I don't exist without your gaze." Musically, it is young people finally making music that old people would like. The songs have complex structures with changes in time and tempo. In places they remind me of Sparks. There are touches of psychedelia and world music. It starts with a grand orchestrated instrumental, which leads into a song intro that sounds like a bit like the start of Shine On You Crazy Diamond. The lead and backing vocals sound like real people and the guitars sound like guitars used to. The production is epic. Songs conclude with grand Queen-like refrains. They can take a simple phrase like "beautiful boy" and build it into a hands-in-the-air festival flag-waving choral epic with soaring lead guitar. I think they should be the next big thing, and this is the first time in any of my recommendations that I've made such a claim. Prelude to Ecstasy, The Last Dinner Party.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Nicola Cowie, Coach Nicola, for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcast. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. You can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And you can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Here is one last tune. This is Silverbacks with Chaotic Harmony. I'll catch you next week.
Be a thief if you feel like. Be the falcon true eyesight. Be the time in the infinite. In one and only light. Be the water turn into wine. Be the hero living a fight. Go on, Lord, come on. Be the writer of your own life. Be the author, don't be shy. Believe if you feel like. Be flirt if you cry. Be your enemy, your alibi. Everyone who told you more. Be a healer, a parasite. Be a gambler, roll the dice. Go on, Lord, come on. Be the writer of your own life. Be the author, don't be shy. See your soul. I see your soul in the smile at the back of me. I see your soul. that's on the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul that's on the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul that's on the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul that's on the back of me. I see your soul.